Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to make a super easy drawstring bag with pockets. First off, you're going to need some material. I'm using 100% cotton, and I have a larger piece here that will be the front and the back of the bag, and a smaller scrap piece for the pockets. You'll also need some scissors and a ruler, or in my case, a self-healing mat and a rotary cutter. Of course, you'll also need some ribbon or string of sorts for the drawstring. The first step is to cut out the front and the back of the bag. So I am creating two rectangles of equal size, and for me they are 15 by 15 inches, since this is the largest I could do with this fabric. Then of course you'll also need to cut out the pocket, which will be the same width as your bag, which is 15 inches in my case. So I started off by straightening up this edge here, and then measuring 15 inches. Now the largest pocket I could make with this scrap of fabric was about 11 inches, but I figured that was a little bit too tall, so I went ahead and cut it down to about 8 inches, which worked out really well for me. Next up, it's time to thread your sewing machine. I recommend using a color of thread that matches your project, so in this case I chose dark blue. Once your machine is threaded, it's time to hem the top edge of all 3 pieces of fabric. To do that, simply roll over the top edge of each piece of fabric by about 1/4 of an inch. Then pin this in place and you're ready to start sewing. When you begin stitching, remember to reverse and go forward and backwards a few times to really secure the stitching in place. Then sew to the end of the line, removing the pins as you go along. Once again, when you reach the end of stitching, you're going to sew backwards and forwards a few times to secure. Repeat the same process with the other 2 pieces of fabric. If you're looking for a more professional look, you can always measure this to make sure it's exact and press it into place using an iron. But for this super simple project, I wouldn't worry about it. Repeat these steps one last time with the 3rd piece of fabric. Once you're done hemming all 3 pieces of fabric, it's time to create the channel for the drawstring. Simply fold over the hemmed edge of fabric by about 1 inch and sew all the way along. This creates a very long, narrow tube that we will later use for the drawstring itself. Repeat the same process with the 2nd piece of fabric that will be the back of the bag. I didn't bother measuring with a ruler, but I did measure them against each other to make sure they're roughly the same size. Now it's time to make your pockets. Place the piece of fabric that you're using for pockets on top of the front of your bag. Make sure to line up the edges, then pin it in place. Since I want to create 2 pockets, I'm going to sew a line of stitching down the middle. My bag is 15 inches wide, so I measured 7.5 inches and marked it with some pins. Now it's time to get sewing. Remember once again that when you start and end your line of stitching, you're going to reverse a few times to make sure it holds securely. And that's it, the pocket is done. If you wanted to make some smaller pockets for pens or pencils, feel free to do that. Remove the pins, then place the back piece of fabric carefully on top of your front piece of fabric so that the outsides are touching and the insides are facing out. Basically, your bag is inside out. Make sure that the edges are aligned and then pin all the way around, except of course the top, which will be left open. Begin stitching just below the channel you created for the drawstrings. We don't want to sew that one shut. When you reach a corner, leave the needle in the fabric and lift up the presser foot. Swivel the fabric 90 degrees, put the presser foot back down, and continue sewing. Once again, lift the presser foot up, spin the fabric, put the presser foot back down, and continue sewing. When you reach the channel, Be sure to stop before sewing it shut, reverse a few times, and you're done. Turn your bag inside out, and now we're ready to put in a drawstring. I measured 2.5 times the width of my bag and cut 2 ribbons of the same length. Next, thread the ribbon through a paper clip or a safety pin. Use this to push the ribbon all the way through both channels of the drawstring bag. Next, tie the ends of the ribbon together. Repeat this same process using your second length of ribbon and starting on the opposite side of the bag. This second time might be a little bit more difficult since sometimes the ribbon gets caught on the first ribbon that's already in there. It might take a few tries. Tie up the ends, and voila! A super easy drawstring bag. I think bags of this size are super practical, but be sure to make a bag of whatever size you find useful. Also, you might consider adding extra features to this bag, such as Velcro or buttons on the pockets, or even adding pockets on the inside. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Be sure to give it a big thumbs up if you found it useful, and let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time!